All right, you got your patch notes up.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so this will be the first PTR we've had since Karazim and Infernal Shrines. Is that right?
That sounds right. I mean, the whole Diablo big event was the last really big change, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm happy they have the PTR. What the average PTR time seems to be a week to 2 weeks, so not quite as long as like League of Legends or other games. So you can expect this next week or the week after. But this is probably the
That would
biggest patch,
be
right?
that'd be crazy. Korea's supposed to still be on the last patch, but Dorms isn't. So Dorms will be on whatever the heck happens here, depending on when it comes out.
We really need a tournament realm for those situations. But
Yeah.
I mean, Blizzard's like super invested in that tournament, so we might be waiting until right after. The finals are April 9th and the 10th.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they pushed it, especially with how much new stuff they're coming out with.
Okay. Well, yeah, because it's the biggest. This is probably the biggest patch, right? Even through alpha, I don't think there was a bigger patch.
It doesn't come with a map. It has the most reworks.
It kind of does.
It comes with Lost Caverns, which is really it reuses all of the assets of of Tomb. Well, I've played it a few times. It's kind of neat, but it is all the same assets.
I mean, we it's not unheard of. Towers of Doom uses a lot of assets from the Cursed Hollow, and then Garden Terror obviously shares almost entirely the same assets as Dragon Shard, just a different color palette.
True.
Um, so yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about Lost Cavern first. The fact that it's a new ARAM map, which is I don't know, it's a pretty small community, but ARAM is obviously a feature that's pretty prevalent in other
I,
MOBAs. I know like a sizable portion of the league player base, millions and millions of players only play ARAM.
I've actually played a few games of ARAM in the past, just like as like a cooldown. Lost 2 games in a row of rank, but still want to keep going, so I'll go jump in an ARAM. There's a whole channel for it.
I,
It's kind of fun. Mostly casual players, very casual. I've actually seen a few really good players in it though, so it is kind of really diverse group of people that play it.
are there any like ridiculously oppressive champions or heroes that I off the top of your head, like Sergeant Hammer or something like that?
Sergeant Hammer's one of the few heroes that has actually a rule about her in the general community. Her ultimate, the global cannon that goes around the map, is actually banned because it's so overpowered on that map.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Jesus. Even her base
So
kit just seems super strong.
yeah, yes, she herself isn't aren't banned because I mean you can't really do that in ARAM, but that talent is definitely banned.
So, what are the general rules of ARAM?
You well, the most of the general rules are enforced on the new map. You can't back from for health, but the new map actually has 4 respawning globes, which I think is one of the more interesting things about this map, as opposed to the old ARAM style. That really changes how everything works out because in the old one you couldn't back at all, but you could use your fountain. Now there's 4 respawning health packs that and a fountain that has a reduced cooldown. So there's much less of a focus on healing and mana regen as there were. It used to be like your first 2 or 3 talents. If you had mana talents, you took them because you spent the whole game out of mana basically. So that really changes up how it was with the old
So,
style, but I think it's better.
is there region globes in the mini waves still?
Yeah, same minion waves. It's basically Tomb's minion waves, but without gems, obviously. And then there's 2 like globes that respawn kind of the either side of the middle, and then one in behind your first fort.
So it kind of seems like heroes with regen globe talents are gonna excel a little bit here.
Yes, yes, I definitely saw that. Chin's really good. Leorc's really good. Stitches is amazing.
So that's
I
pretty
play I
cool.
played a game as Zeratul, and that was kind of fun.
It's just custom games right now, but they did say they are going to be adding it to the arena queue. Arena will probably be coming out with season one, which will probably be the next big patch, judging by the fact that pretty much everything else they've added into this one.
Yeah, the next one after this one, or my dream is that it'll come out in this one, but I doubt it.
I highly doubt it. They're already giving us more than we've ever gotten in one patch, so it's pretty nice. Uh,
Yeah.
Another big thing this patch is the new hero, Dehaka, the StarCraft warrior from Heart of the Swarm. Uh,
Yeah, I've played him around in try mode a little bit. He's pretty interesting.
can his Q be interrupted? Do you know that? The drag?
Uh, that's I only tried in try mode, so I don't know if it can be interrupted, but I doubt it would be. It's very short. 2.5 seconds, but it feels very short when you use it.
I mean, that's
Like,
probably fine just because he is tanky and he's a warrior, so he's going to
yeah,
be in the fray of
he
things.
does he does very little damage. I tried a bunch of different talent builds. He does not do very much damage at all,
Uh,
which
for a
is fine.
tank, what would you
Yeah,
compare him to?
even for a tank, I'd say Stitches. If you pick no talents that increase your damage at all, he does about as much damage as Stitches.
That's not too bad. I think the drag is a lot of utility. You're not going to get it on any squishy backliners, but a moderately tanky bruiser, just stunning them for that long and pulling them into your team, it's a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
utility.
I'd still say it's gonna be interesting how it works out with him. That's pretty strong, and it's not on a very long cooldown at all. You'll find yourself using it every fight. Uh, it's not incredibly long range, so he's probably gonna be mostly hitting melee heroes with it. And the weird thing is with it, you can't really use it in the thick of it that well and get a ton of value. I mean, you'll disable the person, but you're not gonna pull him very far into your team because generally he's just the position, how the positioning works. If you're kind of more in the middle of their team and he's the person you're hitting is more in the middle of your team, you have to run around him during that 2.5 seconds, and you only have like a second of pulling him back. So
Gotcha.
you don't move people as far as you'd kind of think you would.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, I mean, it's kind of good he doesn't have a lot of damage, and that isn't as oppressive as I originally thought it was going to be because he needs to be balanced around his Z, which is the burrow to any bush or vent on the map. And as we see with Falstad, if you have mobility like this, you're a huge threat. And the fact that his isn't limited as much as Falstad is by range, and he can go anywhere on the map, basically makes him a huge counter to things like Abathur, and his split push is actually more threatening than Falstad.
Yeah. In fact, it's kind of there's interesting. There's like I think a 13 or 16 talent that increases your movement speed coming out of it, and then interestingly enough, a level 20 talent very similar to Epic Mount that reduces its cooldown to 10 seconds and reduces the cast time by half a second. So with a 10-second anywhere around the map ability at level 20, and then also like a 60% movement speed off of it, you can really be anywhere at any time, and that adds value to your Q you wouldn't think about because
Well,
you have 3 seconds of that. You're
I
across
mean,
the map, Q someone, you're moving faster.
in League of Legends, I mean, I hate to compare this game too much to League, but one of the strongest things in League is getting a deep ward in, having home guards on your tanky initiator, and teleporting back behind the team, home guarding in and getting an initiate. You can only do that once every 5 minutes in League, and
Yeah.
the fact that you can do it, what'd you say? Its cooldown is 10
10,
seconds?
10 it's 40 seconds base. At level 20 there's a talent similar to Epic Mount that makes it 10 seconds.
So you
30
don't have to
seconds.
have a deep ward in. You can do it pretty much wherever you want because there's a lot of bushes.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to get a strong engage off wherever you are. You don't have to be in base, getting home guard. And instead of 5 minutes, it's 10 seconds. So, I mean, I hate to compare it to a different game altogether, but the fact that just the concept itself is so strong in another game and you have a much, much easier time getting it off in this game is going to be pretty crazy.
If you're comparing it to League, I mean, the obvious comparison is Skarner, right? Similar model design. Skarner, it's his ultimate, but on
Q.
Dehaka, it's his Q, which is I don't know, it's interesting. Heroes' abilities tend to have a higher power curve, I think, in terms of like just utility, but maybe not so much in damage. League health pools seem to be much smaller, and then so damage is more of a utility in that game. But in this game, it's more abilities would be broken in League, but they're less so because healing is so much better and health pools are so much larger. So the comparison is hard to make, but I think you could compare it reasonably.
And it's going to be hard to hit a squishy with Q, but positioning is everything. If there is like a bad player on the enemy team, you can really abuse them with Q. It seems.
Oh yeah, I think you're going to see him as a real ganker. I don't know how useful it's going to be in every team fight because You'd think it'd be really useful, you hit the support or someone that really can't be out of the fight for 2.5 seconds. But in practice, actually getting in there to hit them, you're not a high mobility hero in terms of like just in a team fight. You're high mobility like across the map hero. You don't have a dash. You don't have much movement speed ability. You have a stasis, which is kind of nice, but not much of a way to get into the backline.
Um, so what do you think about Darkstorm as W, which is his AoE damage? Is that enough wave clear for him?
The wave clear on that's okay. It it's enough for him in lane, if in like a solo 1v1 lane, for him to keep up with an opposing laner, but it's not an impressive amount of damage, and there's not really a talent to make it an impressive amount of damage. There's one that makes it so if you're in a team fight and you're hitting heroes with it, it'll reduce the cooldown per hero you've hit, which I think might be taken because it's pretty good. It'll pretty much, if you hit like 2 heroes with it consistently, it'll keep it almost permanently off cooldown.
Is there a talent for minions?
No, I don't believe so. I'd have to go back and look, but I don't think so.
The thing is, a lot of tanks are balanced around their wave clear. When you see
Yes.
Leoric had his 60% or something ridiculous on his Q for minions, that was quickly nerfed. Joanna's still picked around her Knights Take pawn. It's been nerfed pretty substantially, but when you pick Joanna, that's one of the first utilities you think of. You don't really care about her condemned damage in a team fight, but the condemned damage on minions is pretty substantial.
I think that they definitely took a concern in the fact that if they gave him a ton of wave clear and his mount passive, he would be almost too good at split pushing. So I'm not surprised. If you cast it twice, you'll clear a wave pretty easily. If you cast it once and with a bunch of auto attacks and a wave pushing, you'll probably clear it. But it's not like an impressive lanes clear swap type of ability. It's not take pawn. It's not Leoric. It's not going to clear a wave that quickly.
So what do you think of his ultimates? Which one do you think will be picked?
I think the I'd have to look at the name of it. It's the slow. The slow that blinds you.
Isolation?
Yes. That one seems very good, especially if you can get onto a support somehow. It's got somewhat of a okay range. You could probably get that off on a backliner consistently. It's very, very powerful. It's a 3-second silence in addition to everything else it does. So does a decent amount of damage, slows you for 3 seconds, silences you for 3 seconds. Then you hit that on a Zeratul, you hit that on a backliner, that's a dead backliner, right?
I like the fact that Blizzard's designing this guy around mostly skill shots and outplaying with Burrow. So you have your skill shot on Q, you have a skill shot on your most impactful ultimate, and your E, as we can see with Ice Block and Molten Block, can be used to really bait out and outplay a lot of people's abilities. So the fact that he has a lot of potential with his kit, not even counting his Brush Stalker Z, I really like the design that they're going for, and I hope they keep it up.
I think a lot of what people aren't realizing about him, just by reading what his talents and abilities do, is his passive. It's kind of like a high power thing that you're not going to really notice until you use it. You get essence from being near heroes or minions when they die, so it's similar to Diablo's passive, but it's active instead of Diablo has to die to use his. His passive is an incredibly strong heal. If you got 50 stacks, it's basically your full health bar of a heal over 5 seconds, which is, it's second wind at level 1 basically if you're near enough minions and hero deaths.
Stone form, you mean?
Stone form.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, that's crazy. You could actually feasibly, from what it sounds like, pick him as a solo tank just to soak up the damage, something that you might pick a Murden or a Joanna for if you take that adaptation ultimate and you don't really need isolation.
Yeah, he has kind of the appeal to do that. I'd almost lean him towards more of a Diablo role, though. Like, I think he'd shine with the second tank. So the second tank can kind of be holding the front line. He can move back and forth a little bit more with his Q and displace a few people.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. We haven't had a interesting warrior in almost several years now. Chen was the last one that had a kit that was actually interesting. The rest have been pretty lackluster. Yeah. Joanna's obviously one of the most boring heroes in the game. It's really good and impactful. I enjoy playing her, but just her kit Leorc's kit are all incredibly boring to play. I mean, at least in
Yeah,
my opinion. So
they're kind of heroes. They're like staple cards in card games. They're just, you kind of need them in order to make the decks work, just because they're there to fill a role. But they're not exciting. They're not the cool legendaries that you can find that really make stuff shine.
exactly. So I mean, pretty standard. We get a little custom map. It's pretty big, and then a hero. Kind of what we get every patch. But now we're going to get into the big meat of the patch, which is something that the community's probably been complaining about for about 2 years now, is the fact that we didn't have bans in ranked, which is pretty big, honestly.
Yes.
We have impressive things like release Kale running around. Even Kale a couple patches ago were just so oppressive in the games. The fact that you didn't have any bans meant that your entire pick ban was picked around who got first pick, which is awful. But now we have the mid ban system, which is what we see in ranked play. You see it in Here's the Dorm, ETS, BlizzCon, all that. They used the mid ban system where there's a first pick, first ban, but in the middle of the draft there is a midway ban that's going to affect the flow of the draft, and you basically have to draft based on what you think the enemy team is going to be doing for their first 2 picks, which I think it's the most interesting way to ban.
And I think it's a much better system than like the League of Legends 3 bans and then you pick all your heroes type of thing. It lets you kind of respond to picks, and it gives you the choice to kind of pick a hero and then ban out another hero that fills that role, so you kind of more limit the opposing players' options. It's much more strategic than just like, let's ban out 3 of the heroes we most don't want to see. And
well, it's a nice midway compromise between League and Dota. League is 3 bans and then you pick 5. Dota is kind of got a mid ban system. I can't speak to it too much just because I'm not like well versed in it, but I know it's much more complicated than a standard mid ban. It goes back and forth quite sometimes, and I think this is a nice compromise where it's not overly complicated, but it's not as simple-minded as just picking
and that makes
5
sense,
in a row.
because Blizzard's very concerned with the length of time it takes to get into a game. The old adage is occasionally in like League and Dota, it'll take you longer to get into a game and all that than the game will last, and even that with the longer length of League and Dota games. So Blizzard's very concerned with that, and they even outlined exactly how long you had to pick the first ban and the second ban, just because they wanted to express that this is only going to take an extra minute and 20 seconds, I think, out of the whole phase, or maybe 3 minutes.
Well, because the first ban is 45 seconds, the second ban is 30 seconds, but they have decreased hero pick timers from 45 to 30 seconds.
Okay.
Which, I mean, that seems pretty quick. You have to pick your hero in 30 seconds, but with the new search feature and the new favorite option, it's going to be a lot quicker, I think.
Hopefully you'll already be hovering it.
Right, with the favorite option itself, I think even with the addition of the 2 bans, the game should start at about the same pace as they did before, which is pretty remarkable that they were able to do all that in one patch. Something that doesn't really affect us as much as the updated ranked requirements.
Yes.
Anyone that we play with is going to be obviously level 30, have 14 heroes, and be level 5 or higher. But the fact that you have to be level 5 or higher to participate with the hero, it's pretty big. You're not going to get any like first time whatever in Hero League, which is nice. I wish maybe level 6 would be a little better. So instead of 2 games, it was more like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Either way, it's nice.
And now free week heroes count, which is mildly interesting, I guess. If you don't have as many heroes, it means that most people that were able to participate aren't suddenly not going to be able to play Hero League, which would be awkward, I think. But it could still prove that happens for a few people, which would be unfortunate.
Pretty good changes there. The draft lobby itself has had a pretty significant overhaul. Have you seen the pictures for it?
I've done a draft in it, actually.
It's basically got the portraits you see in game on the lower left hand corner of your screen is what you'll see when you're picking your hero, which I think is a really good change.
Yes.
But I mean, it does highlight some of the weaker original models like Lily and Nazebo that aren't quite up to snuff with some of the newer heroes. But what I really liked about the animations is that skins show. So
Yes,
I think that's really cool.
And oddly enough, with those worse models, the PTR actually doesn't. For some reason, I have my settings on ultra, but it's giving me like the low quality graphics, and it's kind of frustrating to play with. But it made that stand out even more. How antiquated the like super low quality graphics make it look.
Right. Well, I like the skin portion because if you see someone hovering Gazla, and they had the master skin for Gazla, you might feel a little bit better for it. Might not quite be so quick to rage
especially with these changes. That we'll get to those eventually, but they're kind of interesting.
Obviously, we talked about bans. Let's see what else is next. The custom game bans. So you have 4 options now: not using bans, 1 ban, 2 bans, and the mid ban system that you'll see in the ranked game. So that's pretty nice. The big thing we haven't talked about this is that in the competitive scene, in scrims, everywhere, we've been using third-party websites to draft. We've been using Heroes Draft. Chair League uses Top Drafter, which is probably the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
It's very unattractive.
And even for Heroes of the Dorm, Blizzard mocked up their quick proprietary software that I thought they were going to be using going forward because it does look a little bit nicer than Heroes Draft. It is Blizzard software that they've been working on in-house, but it just seems like it's going to be a small temporary thing because this new ban system and the fact that they're adding it to custom games means that all of these third-party websites are going to be pretty obsolete.
It seems almost like they're responsible who criticize them using third-party drafting software for all their big tournaments. They just want to say, yeah, we're using our own thing now. We don't want to deal with that. But yeah, it's those were a temporary fix. I think everybody used them, knew they were a temporary fix. Heroes Draft, that as it got popular, started having lag issues, which is I think why a lot of people moved to some people moved to the Top Drafter.
It's a change that can't be discounted. The fact that scrims are going to be much easier to set up, much quicker to get into. Small tournaments and cups are going to be easier to run. There's not going to be weird ESL rules for map picks and first picks and map striking because you're going to have all of this in game and not have to use third-party software. Which
it's just one step closer to those in-client tournaments that I think would be a great addition.
If that came with Season 1, I would be so happy.
That would be a great patch. I'd be very happy about that.
So what else do we have here? What's next?
We have a couple of substantial reworks. Do you want to go over the smaller changes or just the big sweeping stuff?
There's actually a couple more UI changes we need to talk about. Look, we've already it feels like we've already been talking forever about UI, but they're just adding so much to this patch. They've actually out of nowhere they just rolled in here that they're adding death recaps.
Oh yeah, those are kind of cool. They make it a little easier to rage about how much damage Lunara does.
Yeah. If I don't have to hear about what did I even die to like over and over again, that's the only reason I'm waiting for it. Yeah,
my favorite.
Also, hotkeys, individual profiles for different heroes. The UI seems really cool. It seems pretty.
I've been waiting so long for that to happen. I'm so excited.
There's nothing off the top of my head I would probably be using it for. I know some people that play on release just can't play Sylvanas, so this is a welcome change for them.
Yes, I currently play on release right now because I just for those high impact abilities, I like to be able to line them up. It's not a much longer delay, but for this targeted stuff, I would so rather use just quick cast on it. But I love on release for my your really impact your stitches hooks. I like to be able to sit there for a second and make sure I've got the range lined up just perfectly. This will be such a relief to be able to do.
Yeah, there are a couple things that I think I'll definitely use it on that don't require you to use it immediately, but like things that you need to line up, like Ring of Frost from Jaina, are going to be really welcome here.
Yeah, being able to hover that over and just wait for the exact moment is a nice ability.
And these are things that the community hasn't really been complaining about as much. There's things much higher on the tier list of complaints that people have been, making Reddit threads about and stuff. And Blizzard has added this anyway. And something to note: this is probably the most requested change that hasn't come out yet in Dota 2. That people have been requesting for about 3 years now. It's not in that game
Really?
yet, and 1 year into this game, without even a lot of outcry, it's already added into heroes. So very nice.
Well, and it does seem to be done very well, which kind of highlights, I think, the way that Blizzard intends to do this stuff is it's outcried, it's called a problem. Everybody knows it's a problem, but it's similar to rank. They're waiting to do it right, and they don't want to have to do it again afterwards.
Right. So they could have just added bans. Instead, they had this total overhaul where they added favorite champions, a search function, animations, skins, and a mid-ban system, all in the same one. So I'm glad they waited, and I'm glad they have this philosophy where if they're going to do something, they're going to do it right.
Yeah, this is a much better system than a knee-jerk league-based system would have come up with, I think.
So there's a couple new art assets that have been added into the game. All the generic talents are now officially updated. Every color tint that was necessary because the same abilities existed on the same talents here have been added, so you can definitely tell apart everything at this point. Also, there's some updated models for Consuming Blaze on Cho'Gall and Molten Block, as well as some rocket turret and explosive charge changes on Gazla. Some of the older things have been updated, which is nice.
As far as those ability icons go, I tabbed out at like level 16 or so in an ARAM match today, and I think half of the icons for abilities had changed. And I'm not sure if that was because my quality was on like ultra low for some reason, or if it was actually updated. I'm sure it's because they were updated.
Well, I remember in Heroes of the Dorm when they were showcasing some of the heroes and talking about it, at the beginning of the broadcast for the newer people tuning in, they were using all new talent assets for like things like Tyrande and Falstad that we hadn't seen before for like 11 or 12 different heroes. So
yeah,
we got a little sneak preview before we even saw that these were going to be updated.
There's a ton of different looking talents right now. It's actually, they all look kind of more unique. I mean, you used to be able to kind of confuse almost too. Even if they were different icons, they were the same color, and they're all now very different. Like the closest you'll get is a yellow or green talent, and that's still very easy to differentiate.
Before we talk about some of the battleground changes, there's a couple of minor changes to movement. Kerrigan's Ravage, Illidan's Dive, stuff like that can now be able to be used on invulnerable units, which is not a small deal. If Uther's ulting himself, you can still use it to dive to him and stay on the other side of him if he's low. It doesn't make him completely invulnerable to being targeted, which is a pretty significant change. That also applies to objects created by enemies like Sergeant Hammer's spider mines. So
and those spider mines are actually a bigger deal than you'd think. I find myself wanting to jump to them a lot whenever I play Kerrigan. For some reason, it seems to be against Hammer. I don't know why that tends to happen, but it's always frustrating, especially if you go to the Q build where you're queuing a lot of stuff and you kind of want to queue those mines. I'm not sure if it's going to do damage. Is the mine still only killable by auto text?
I would imagine it would do damage. I would imagine. Which for Ravage is pretty big.
A pretty good upgrade.
On my way, ping pathing lines, just small UI tweaks, and then a couple of major battleground changes. The Dragonite is now immune to the attack speed slows by the forts and keeps.
That's a gigantic change.
That's huge.
That's incredibly big.
They compensated it by nerfing the charge a little bit to where they're not stunned when they land for the 1 second, but I don't think that's enough of the nerf to offset the attack speed
Dragonite,
slow.
especially early, is now so much stronger. I mean, the first Dragonite, you already basically only take walls. You would never try and run the first Dragonite into a fort because it's just not worth it. You'll do very little damage and put yourself in a bad position. I doubt it's going to change too much what you do with the first Dragonite, but later game Dragonites, like that changes how you approach them. You can't, as defense, you can't just clear out the waves and expect it to not want to dive your fort, because now it can.
It makes a mid-game objective that's already incredibly impactful that people fight for pretty fervently for, even that much more so. So that'll be interesting.
And people did fight for it a lot, but also people weren't overly concerned with giving up. It wasn't a curse. It wasn't an objective that if you gave it up, you felt you lost. It was like, we won this team fight, but they got the Dragonite. Let's go clear it out real quick, type of thing. you were willing to trade the Dragonite for certain things. Now I don't know if you would.
That's true. Guard of Terror, huge changes there. A lot of the reduction on the player control print, 15% reduced damage, basic attacks now deal 50% damage to non-heroic enemies, and basic attack instantly kill minions. Not a big deal on that last one. The biggest change here is overgrowth. The fact that you would get the plant, it wasn't really good for defending. You would pretty much ping pong it between whatever two lanes and throw your W out whenever possible, and just kind of have a Benny Hill circus chase for the next 50 seconds for both teams, which wasn't that interactive and wasn't fun. Probably the most complained about thing now that Haunted Mines is out. They've really picked a pretty simple and subtle solution in the fact that it no longer does damage on the W. So you might,
and it seems subtle, but that's probably the biggest change to a map since the Haunted Mines rework. If I did compare it to anything else, that's gonna utterly change how that map's played, because the terrors, it's decent at fighting. Its polymorph is a pretty good thing, but it's no longer, you got two terrors in a row, you're gonna get a keep basically. It changes entirely how you approach that map at a competitive level. It devalues the objective a lot.
It does devalue it a lot because you have to be in one lane with it. You need to push with it, or you're not really going to be damaged, because it needs to be auto attacking the structures that are disabled by overgrowth. Now that overgrowth does no damage, what you do get is 100% bonus damage to structures from the Garden Terror. So the duration is increased. So you do still get a lot of damage off on it. Does it disable it? Yeah, it still does disable.
It is. It's one of the two things it does now. It seems very weak.
So the duration is increased, the health is increased from overgrowth, but you're gonna need your whole team there. You're gonna need your whole team there. You're gonna need to stay in one lane with the terror, which gives the defenders a lot of options, especially because the basic attack damage is reduced on the player-controlled terror. It's not going to be as impactful as it was before in a team fight. It was never really that impactful early game, and late game it's going to do a lot less damage. So it gives the defenders a lot of options for actually coming back after losing an objective.
And an interesting thing is it doesn't damage minions and mercs anymore. I could see why you wouldn't want to damage structures, but that's one of the changes to it I'm not so sure about. Being able to kill merc waves with it was kind of a big deal, because now you'd think that since it might be used more in a team fight scenario, you'd want it to be able to clear those mercs and clear the general NPCs around the fight. It doesn't do that now. So the terror used to be defined by its ability to drop those seeds, and now it's going to be defined by its ability to actually auto attack and fight things, which it's just a fundamentally different thing. It's hard to see what the meta of that map's going to be anymore.
Yeah, so one thing we can agree on is the value of Dragonite has gone up significantly. The value of the Garden Terror has gone down significantly.
Yes.
A couple of... did you have anything else to say on the Battlegrounds?
Well, the value of the Dragonite, of the Garden Terror, you're going to see the value of actually taking the seeds and the experience that gives you go up a little bit, but at the same time, the value of what those seeds gets you goes down. So you might start seeing people ignoring the seats, because usually you lose a wave or two to get seats. So maybe you'll start seeing people saying, the first Garden Terror is not going to take structures. Let's not bother with it. That first night's going to last long, and it already can last quite a long time in like a uncoordinated match. So I think that the way the general player is going to see that map is going to change. Again, comparing it to the Mines map, the Mines change, the Mines rework back in Alpha is the only really big change to a Battleground we've had.
That's true. Well, a couple of general talent changes. Arcane Power moving from 5 to 10 seconds. I don't think that's going to be a big deal, because no one's really taking Arcane Power right now. Maybe Kalthos took it, but his new level 20 is a little bit more impactful. The big change from all these generic talents is the damage reduction from block going up from 50 to 75%.
Yes.
Block's already a super undervalued talent from a lot of people. Korea likes to run block a lot, and the fact that they're buffing it by this much is pretty significant.
It's a huge change. I mean, block was big on it was taken a while ago. It was taken a lot more. Now I think they've actually been reworking a lot of level 1 talents, and you've seen it taken less, and the regeneration talents taken more. but I think that's a big change because that's I mean half as much damage, right, from your first 2 auto attacks hit. That's we're gonna see block come back on a few heroes, and I think they noticed that with the nerf on Murky's block. They changed it to fish tank now. That's called fish tank, and it's only 50%. They said the heroes that already always take block, which I think is what Murky always takes block. And are there any other heroes that actually always take block?
Not always off the top of my head. I know Zera has a really good option to take block if he doesn't want globes. But yeah, not off the top of my head.
So that I guess that could be a buff to that pick on Zera. But yeah, I mean they kind of nerfed the heroes that thought would be too problematic on it. It's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out. It buffs a level 1 talent to a few other heroes. We'll see how that spins out.
Yep. Maybe Sonya. We'll see. Gaul and Nat can now use Shove, and I have Kilrog while the Dragon Knight and Garden Terror. Shove is pretty useless. No one really gets it.
Yeah.
But I have Kilrog while you're in the Dragon Knight and the Garden Terror is not insignificant, but it's not a big deal.
So that's the second buff they've given to Shove, right? They increased its range. It's almost the range of a Flash now, isn't it?
Yeah, it might be good because they moved it from level 16, which is the biggest buff, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it's not awful. If I get Shove, if my Gaul gets Shove, I'm not raging at him like I did a couple months ago. So.
Yeah, I mean it's level 1 talent. It competes with the vision wards and the reduced cooldown on sprint. So, I mean it's comparable now. I would think that it's almost a decent pick in certain situations. They keep tweaking a little bit better. Yeah.
Couple of Greymane changes. Marked for the kill, significant buffs to the range and speed, but definitely not enough to, be picked or go for the throat. I don't think there's ever a situation where you would get marked for the kill over go for the throat still. I honestly haven't seen it since the first week. There's a couple of quality of life changes, though, that I think are a big deal. Is basic attacks in human form have responsiveness. It already felt decent. It already felt pretty good. I can't imagine it feeling that much better, but it looks like it will. And then the melee basic attack animation speed by 50% has increased. I don't know. Just going to feel a lot nicer on him. And he's already one of the strongest heroes in the game.
Now, is that the melee for his human form or the melee in his werewolf form? Because in the human form, he doesn't do a different melee attack. That's what I assume it means.
I think that's
if
what
it's
it
in
means.
The werewolf form. That's actually a bigger difference.
I think it is because the bullet point here says Greymane's basic attacks in human form, and then the second bullet point is nested below it. So I think it does mean human form.
That sounds like that would make sense. But if it is in
if it's working form, it's a straight buff.
Yeah, because you can auto attack move
auto Q auto
way better. Yeah.
All right, and we are now into our first significant rework. In addition to all these ridiculous UI changes, there have been 5 hero reworks, which is the most we've ever gotten in one patch. The first one is Illidan. They've removed Shatter Shield, Regen Master, Seasoned Marksman, Fall Through, First Aid, Giant Killer, Blood for Blood, Stone Skin. These are all talents that he got. This is basically them removing his current build.
Yes, and when you see something that's that many things removed, you kind of, at this point, you have to go and just look at a new talent tree of what he actually gets, because this is a full rework. I think this is one of the more significant reworks of all of the heroes. Maybe Gazlo comes close, but they take away basically every talent he takes, and then give him a whole bunch of other talents that look pretty good. I've played one game with him. He felt pretty good, actually, but it's good. This I think is the most substantial rework. That's every talent he takes basically changed.
They did increase his health pretty significantly, almost 225 points. His health regen is increased and his attack speed is increased. So a lot of base adjustments there. The biggest thing, I think, I don't want to talk about all these new talents because this is something you got to play with. This isn't something you can kind of just eyeball the talents.
There's a few of these we can mention. But
right.
Yeah,
like
a lot of them you got to touch them.
I'd like to mention Fiery Brand, the level 16 new talent. Every 4th consecutive basic attack against the same enemy hero deals damage equal to 6% of the target's max health. 6% health on an auto attack is a ridiculous amount of burst. The fact that you're sticking on squishy targets and have that additional burst is not awful, but the fact that this just cripples tanks is a pretty big deal.
And if you're against this same talent tier has the talent tier that I believe doubles the damage of Q on targets you've already hit. It's something like at the level you take it, 400 damage, so an extra 300 damage almost on his Q if you use on the same target twice. So I think that's going to be a choice between those two talents almost, and I think there's an additional defensive option at that level too. Of whether you want to be killing squishier targets or tankier targets. That's 6% extra damage to like a chokehold is huge. You'd probably always take that in that situation. But against like a Muradin tank and a bunch of backline units, maybe you take the double damage on Q second time you use it because it ends up being a lot of damage. I think that's what I went with in the one game I've played of Illidan since the rework in the PTR. And that's because it was kind of against a whole bunch of almost newbie players. The matchmaking's not too great on PTR right now, so it's against it. All the reworked heroes, Gazlo, KT, not great players. So I took that extra damage on Q, and it worked out pretty well. It's actually a lot of damage you might underestimate.
Well, something significant to note is that there's a lot of Q changes. The fact that they're nerfing a lot of his tankiness in his builds. If you get any of the Q talents whatsoever, automatically changes the way you're going to play him, because currently the way Illidan plays, it's actually more DPS to not use Q on mercenary camps or bosses or objectives like the Battlefield of Eternity objective. So the fact that you're actually going to be using Q is going to change your interactivity completely. The fact that your DPS isn't cut by using Q, it's actually increased.
You have to approach this hero as basically a new hero. It's very different. Your Q is almost entirely mobility. It was mobility before, but now it's mobility and it does damage, so you're actually encouraged to use it more than it used to be, which used to be you held it so you could escape to a minion or something as long as you could.
E is still functionally the same, but there is some differences. The talent it seems like you want to be getting is where your sweeping strike reduces the cooldown, so you have more access to E.
Yes.
I don't know. He just seems less tankier with his build, but they buffed his base stats to compensate. And if you have the Rhaegar, the Abthur, or the Tassadar, it looks like if you run that Protect the Illidan comp, he does a ton more damage now, so he's a much more scary threat.
He's a lot harder to lock down with that extra health. It's hard to stun him once and have the whole team turn and look at him at once, and he just blows up. Now he can kind of jump in, do a little stuff, get out, and not be so afraid of dying to an Uther stun if he jumps on the wrong target or something like that. Another change that's interesting is the Unending Hatred at level 1, which is basically Seasoned Marksman, but once you get to 20 bonus damage, you get an additional 10 for free on top, which is kind of a huge spike for someone who auto attacks as much as he does. Right at take that talent level 1, you might hit that level, I don't know, 10-ish. It makes your 10 spike bigger if you take that. If you took Seasoned Marksman before.
And it's weird because it's a spike that's not dependent on your team, right? It's one of the first times we're seeing this, and in addition to this, Kael'thas actually has one of these with his regen globes, which we'll talk about. Yeah, it's not dependent on your team's level. It's dependent on how you're doing in lane and how many you're killing. So, and the fact that it's a pretty linear spike where you get 20 stacks, you get 10 more. That's something you need to call out on comms. That's something you need to try to fight around and not fight if you have 19 stacks, right? And you're about to hit 20. So that's interesting.
Something to note is it doesn't say it, but it's still Seasoned Marksman, that it'll still keep stacking after that. I know it wasn't clear when I picked it, and I wanted to make sure, but it even says 0 out of 200 on the stackage, but it still stacks above that. So you have 300 out of 200. You keep stacking up. You're not stopped at 30 bonus damage.
And while that is really good, they have moved Immolation to level 1 too, which is a pretty good talent in its own right. So a lot of diversity there. Yes, the two biggest things I want to talk about are his ultimates. Metamorphosis no longer has the attack speed buff, which I don't think is a big deal. He's got a sizable damage increase to make up for that. The health bonus is increased. If you are picking Metamorphosis, it's because you're team fighting and you're hitting multiple targets. That 20% attack speed bonus from the demonic form is going to just be that much more impactful. Which we'll probably see that more than Blink now.
the big deal with the ability was, I mean, yeah, the extra health is great, but the biggest thing about it, I think, most Illidan players used it for was to kind of get out of hairy situations. That there was some AoE thrown on the ground, you're about to get stunned or something. You could use it to kind of almost as a momentary stasis, and then you get some more health and get to go back in. The attack speed was nice, but it's not like you used that to really just do more damage. You used it as it was always used defensively, so
Right.
it's not a huge change to lose that attack speed.
And also something really nice, really fun. We know Legacy, one of our friends, one of his favorite abilities to get in the game is the Hunt. Um, Nowhere to Hide now passively reveals all enemy heroes, which are below 25% health. That's his level 20 talent, so you're not going to see that being super impactful, but it is going to be nice, it's going to be fun, and it's going to be terrifying if you're trying to leave a team fight and Illidan's still alive.
Yes, it's going to be something you can't escape into a bush, or maybe you can't do that boss because it'll take you below 25% health. It's definitely something that you're going to have to check if he takes at level 20, and don't get surprised if you drop below 25 that you're suddenly finding yourself with an Illidan on you, even though you thought you were safe.
This isn't a rework of the talent. The wording is it also passively reveals, so this is in addition to the fact that it does give him global range. So be wary of that. Probably one of the most significant changes for the least amount of lines is Jaina, which is our next hero.
Oh yes.
So improved ice block has been moved from 13 to 20. The cooldown has been reduced and the duration has been reduced. And then his ice barrier talent. No, go on.
The reading of that talent it's almost a roller coaster ride, right? Move from level 13 to 20. Wow, that's a huge nerf. Cooldown reduced from 60 to 20. Wow, that's a huge buff. What does that let you do? Duration reduced. It's crazy how much they just changed that ability. It is 3 lines.
Something to note. I saw that and I thought Jaina was dead immediately, but it is important to note that Ice Barrier has been moved from 16 to 13. So you do have a defensive option. No one really picks Ice Barrier because Northern Exposure and the root, can't remember what the root's called, are so good. But the fact that you do have another defensive option to fill the void of improved ice block is good. It gives you a shield for the damage you do to chilled targets. So if you're running Q build, you are going to be a little tanky with this. You might not be as squishy as you once were before. So we'll have to see how it plays out. I think the W build with Conjurer's Pursuit is going to be pretty dead, but the Q build I think is still alive and well.
Okay. I'd just like to question, you improved ice block versus blink. A 20-second cooldown stasis is pretty good, but blink is also pretty good.
Blink's like one of the best talents in the game. It's pretty significant.
So at 20, what do you take?
If you're running the Q build at this point with the ice barrier, I think at level 20, you kind of got to go all in and go for the buffed arcane power, which is now 10 seconds, because you're getting
you go arcane power over the secondary volt. If you're going Q build and you go elemental, obviously you would go elemental second stack, right? It's
Wintermute, yeah.
Wintermute. That's the ultimate like Q build type of thing. But for the second proc on ring, is that bad?
I don't think second proc on ring is something you'd ever go for. Yeah, I don't know. It depends if you're going Q build and you still need the ring because you're running something like a Zagara or somewhere, or like a Zeratul where you need to follow up on the Wombo ultimates. You might want to look at getting arcane power, but yeah, Wintermute's probably going to be your option if you're going.
I do agree with not going the second stack on the ring, but so comparing to the 20-second cooldown ice block. What do you think about that? That's a really short cooldown on that ability.
It depends on how the game's going. It depends on their dive. If they're running something like Vala, Falstad, and something else in the backline, it doesn't look like they have, and like a Joanna and not like a Murden. Definitely, you're going to be safe, especially with the level 13 defensive talent and Ice Barrier. It really just depends on the game, and she's still as versatile as she was before. These are pretty significant changes, but I think once people get used to them, she will still be as interesting and fun to play as she was before.
Okay. So moving on to KT, I haven't had a chance to play him yet since the rework, and It's quite a significant amount of stuff.
It's a pretty large rework. It took me a while to read through it to kind of figure out where they were going with it. Again, much like Illidan, he does have a power spike that's independent of his level, with the 25 regen gloves giving him the Arcane Barrier ability. They've taken away Arcane Barrier, which is probably one of the strongest abilities in the game, for what it provides for the hero, which was level 16. It meant that you couldn't dive kill, you couldn't kill him. But now he gets it at around level 11, which is about the time you get 25 regen gloves.
That's about when you get 25, yeah. And it's all for the talent that people already took, right? That's broken in a way, right? Why would anybody take anything else at level 1? I'm almost questioning why they... I mean, they do buff a few of these level 1 talents, but 5% ability power, the rest of level 1's just not... It can't compare. I think Mana Deck is the only thing anybody's ever going to take. That's too good.
Yeah, no, it's way too good. It's Arcane Barrier on level 1 that you don't get to use until level 11. It's pretty weird, but it's definitely what you're going to take every game.
I mean, I kind of like this design philosophy of your thing you take level 1's going to kind of affect you in 10 or so levels. You're committing to a late spike in power, which I think is what they were doing before with those level 1 talents that scaled, but they're making them a little more exciting halfway through the game. But people already took these talents. These talents were already highly valued, and I don't think they buffed the other level 1 talents enough to really compete. I think it's going to be you're probably going to take Seasoned Marksman on Illidan now, and you're probably going to take Globes on KT. I don't see a compelling reason not to.
Another big change is the new level 16 talent Twin Spheres, where Verdant Spheres gains an additional charge, which means you can use an ability 3 times in the span of a second, which is going to be pretty huge for his burst. Yes. The fact that this is level 16 and we don't have to get Arcane Barrier because you get it at level 1 means you pretty much get this for free, which is pretty insane.
I mean, KT was kind of falling off right now, but there's that. There's obviously Mana Addict, and then there's the fact that his Living Bomb already spreads. It has Chain Bomb.
They give him Chain Bomb at baseline, but the fact that you can't double dip on the Chain Bombs like you currently can in Live is pretty big. At level 20, we obviously get that ability in Master of Flames, where Living Bomb can now spread indefinitely between heroes.
Well, you couldn't double dip before. You can't double proc it. You can't DWW twice and blow it up immediately, but it never spread back. That level 20 talent's interesting, but I can't see good players ever actually getting any value out of that against other good players. That's bouncing back and forth. Yeah, you already avoided your teammates on the second bounce because it was just damage you wanted to avoid, but it's just another reason to avoid them.
Well, with you're saying that doesn't really affect the 3 charges from Verdant Spheres if you triple W1 target?
The W talent? The level 20 talent that lets you that lets your Living Bomb bounce back and forth indefinitely? No, I don't think that's really going to matter because you can't proc Living Bomb immediately anymore. You can't put Living Bomb on a target that already has Living Bomb, so you can't force it to spread.
It detonates it immediately when you put another Living Bomb on. So, I'll have to see how it works out. It's not like readily apparent just reading text how it's going to work.
It says you can no longer it can no longer be cast on targets already affected by Living Bomb. So I assume that means you can't spread it anymore. You put Living Bomb and it has to wait the duration now.
Okay. Well, you can't buff up Living Bomb's damage at level 7 anymore. It seems they've taken away that talent. They've also given him the option, if they are going double tank, you can get the Burn Flesh talent for Flame Strike, which will deal damage equal to 8% of their maximum health if it hits multiple targets, which is nice. I like that they're giving almost all of these new champions options for percent health damage on tanks. So it seems like
tanks are getting a real hit here. The health stacking tanks.
At least double tanks, especially. Yeah. If you're gonna go double tank, you better make sure your draft is on point and you got these bans ready, especially for Tychus, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Tychus is interesting.
From what it seems, Gravity Lapse, a big change is that using Verdant Spears, which people kind of did, subconsciously you're getting ganked, you want to use verdant spears and use gravity laps. Now it increases the duration of gravity laps, which is in addition to hitting multiple targets, which is going to be even better for those panic gravity lapses when you're getting ganked. However, Netherwind was changed to be worse. Now the ranges increase, which is going to increase his roaming and gankability if you're going to go for a clear swap, but it doesn't come out as fast as it did before.
So back when I used to play a lot of KT, I would say maybe I would empower my stun once a game. Like, it's not something you should have to do. It's something that you've positioned poorly, and now they're diving on you. Because post 13, you'd obviously always want to be doubling your chain bomb, and then pre 13, empowered Q is so much damage that you'd almost never want to do that. It's really something in a situation where you catch yourself in a bad place. Multiple people are diving you. You have to stun multiple people. This kind of gives you a reason to, even if you're not in a bad situation, to try and empower your stun. It just makes it a better stun. If you're going in with multiple people, maybe you don't need to buff your damage a little bit. You can stun them longer, and then hopefully the rest of your team will do more damage in that duration. So it makes it less of a binary decision of, oh, do I have to stun more people or I'm going to die, or do I want to do more damage? That's changing quite a bit of how you would use your passive on gravity laps.
So it seems with Kel'Thas that they're trying to go for the niche he's already in, where if you pick him, you're going for the late game. Now his power spike instead of 13 will be 16. He'll be a little bit more safer in the early game, getting Arcane Barrier a little early, but a little less impactful for the fact that Chain Bomb doesn't do as much damage, and Netherwind isn't as good. So overall, I think he is going to fulfill a niche in that you're going for a late game comp, but it's going to be a much more powerful version of the current Kel'Thas, in that if you do get the late game, he's going to be much more impactful.
So I haven't gotten to play the KT change yet, with giving the basically chain bomb at level 1. I have to question how much clear that's going to give him. Is he going to can he put a chain bomb on a wave and basically clear the wave at level 1? Because that's going to be big. He used to empower Q.
It will be interesting, but we don't have Ignite at level 7 anymore, so
yes,
possibly not. His empowered Q at level 1 does clear the wave pretty effectively, so I'm not sure if he will use Chain Bomb on the wave. We'll see, though.
I'll have to see how that plays out, because early game he's already pretty decent with his empowered damage abilities. His early game wasn't really ever terrible. The adage was you would be playing to get to level 13, but his early game was never really that bad. It just never spiked like all the other mages. All the other mages, somewhere between 1 and 13, had a big spike that he just didn't have. So he would kind of almost flounder in the 7 to 13 range. But without having to get Chain Bomb at 13, I'm wondering how his 1 to 16 is going to be. It might actually be pretty strong now.
Yeah, it remains to be seen. I don't think I've ever taken Ignite or taken Chain Bomb and not taken Ignite, so these are definitely things we're going to have to try out. But interesting nonetheless. Kerrigan, small buffs on her Ultralisk, definitely not impactful enough to warrant a discussion. I don't think it's a big deal.
Actually, I find myself leaning to Ultralisk in some situations recently. I don't lean to Kerrigan often, but occasionally I would play Kerrigan, and I would say, all right, this is a team comp. I'm not going to be in the thick of it as often as I want. I'm mainly going to be here to initiate and then kind of pick off at the end. So the other ultimate's not going to have that much of a situation. Maybe I throw Ultralisk on the support, and if the support isn't Breaker, obviously you wouldn't want to do that, but a support that doesn't have much mobility that could really throw them something that they don't want to deal with. It's almost like a Raider situation. There's not many situations you want to run Raiders, but occasionally it's the right pick. This could make that more often if you take the level 20.
Possibly. Do you get Torask over Blink at level 20, even if you get Ultras?
That's a good question. If I'm taking Ultralisk at level 10, it's because I don't want to be in the thick of it, which means I probably want Blink anyways. But there's a base level buff to Ultralisk damage, so I'm not sure. Egg time life decreased from 8 to 4 seconds. The egg time was already pretty short, so 4 seconds means you're always getting that ultras back. That's basically it. But they're reducing the time, obviously. But I don't know, the health. I'd have to play with it. I don't know how well people are going to be able to focus fire that egg down. So you might always have an ultralist, which could be very powerful.
Well, minor changes to Kerrigan there. Definitely need to keep an eye out on the Ultra's Ultimate. But Lunara's got some not insignificant changes. Choking Pollen, her level 16, which isn't that bad already. It's getting buffed pretty significantly from 50% to 100%. That talent tier is not that good. That's level 16 talent tier, where you usually get basic attack range. And if you're feeling pretty safe, this will add a pretty significant amount of burst. She's known for her sustained damage, but if you get Q at level 1 and this Q at level 16, her burst is not insignificant.
Yeah, if you can just hit more often, that's not too bad actually. Because you're always going to have poison on the target you're using. On usually. Your general engagement as you auto attack and as they retreat, you throw a Q down. Pretty much guarantees to hit the Q. So if you go from 50 to 100%, that's actually not an insignificant. That seems like an insignificant amount of damage because people don't consider the Q's damage. They consider the fact that it puts a stack of the poison on. But you might actually, because people don't consider the auto attack damage either. But if you look at the new death recap talents, you actually do take more auto attack damage than poison damage when you die to her usually. That surprised me a little bit. I thought it would be way more poison damage.
Well, with the build I used to go initially was I would go the Q build with the level 7 basic attack increase after you poison. Obviously now her niche is Nature's Culling, Thornwood Vine. You clear waves and you're kind of a specialist in which you kind of take down all the outers. But the original build I went for was, basically quick match Hero League, outplaying one target with burst damage. And this kind of makes that talent build a little bit more viable again.
Yeah.
I still think Nature's Calling is too broken to ever consider it. But the fact that level 16, the basic attack range, isn't really integral to the Nature's Calling.
Yeah, I actually took auto attack speed a lot of times in that situation just to increase my ability to knock down PV objectives at level 16.
Definitely. And then Let Them Wither, the slow mounts no longer decays. What do you think about that?
So that's a talent that a lot of people didn't take. That's 13 or 16, right? I'm trying to remember what that tier is. Is that the same tier as?
I'm looking. I think it might be 7. No.
I think it's because that was the one that increased your slow to 60%. I think that was 16. Because that competed with auto attack speed and auto attack range. So if it doesn't decay, it's more interesting. But in a 50% slow is pretty good. But I don't know because it's from 30 to 50%, right?
Yeah. Okay, so it is a level 16 talent. Yeah, no one took this. That's why I don't think about it.
Yeah, I agree. No one thought about it. I remember looking at that tier and looking at between attack range and attack speed and being like, what are those other choices?
Yeah, I don't think this is enough. We'll see, but I don't think so.
50% slow is pretty significant. I mean, 60% wasn't really ever considered because it would decay over 3 seconds, which means it was 60% for a very short period. But 50% for 3 seconds, I mean, maybe if you're running a comp with a bunch of skill shot heroes, you might consider it. Like a comp with Stitches, which does combo well with Lunara. It might guarantee a hook on a target, which should already be pretty easy to hit on a 30% slow speed target. But a 50% slow speed target is basically not moving to a Stitches hook. So I don't know. Maybe you could see that happening. I'm not gonna commit to saying I think that's gonna see more play, but it's an interesting change.
These seem to be both buffs, though, to Lunar, which is already in a decent spot, so decent changes. The Butcher, Lamb to the Slaughter changes. I actually haven't read these, so we can talk about them first while I read them.
Okay. I didn't read them either, to be honest. I don't read much about Butcher.
Well, the Lamb to the Slaughter was buffed last patch pretty significantly. Now it can't really be broken. And he's actually been seeing a lot of niche play being picked up. He's pretty broken in solo queue. If you can.
Silence the duration. That's big. It's a it's a 3-second duration now. That's a 3-second silence on a single target, which Lambda the Slaughter was always already what everyone was taking. So that's just a strict buff to
Right, the durations decrease, but I mean, you never caught out a
silence.
squishy target. You never caught out a squishy target with Lamb and then killed them in 4 seconds. You caught out a squishy target with Lamb and you killed them in 1 or 2 seconds. So I don't think the duration
Yeah.
being reduced is going to come into play at all.
Yeah, when you got caught by Lamb of the Slaughter, you weren't thinking, "Oh, I hope I escape this with a sliver of health." You're escaping Lamb of the Slaughter with significant help from allies coming in.
So the
Basically.
chain and silence effects will now be removed if the target becomes invulnerable or unstoppable, which means it can be cleansed and ulted out of again, which is a pretty big deal.
Weirdly enough, it could be cleansed out of, but only that last second, right? So you could cleanse it and they could run away, but if you cleansed it before the last second was up, you would just teleport back. So I guess that's the change that's happening. And I mean, if you that's a buff to cleanse.
Well, this also changed. Seems like you want to prioritize your Lamb to the Slaughter on the Rhaegar or the Uther, whoever's going to be cleansing or making the target immune. They can't make themselves immune if they're silenced. So
Yes.
this seems to be you want to focus your Lamb to the Slaughter less on the squishies and more on the supports in this situation.
So I guess if you charged in onto an Uther and somehow didn't get stunned before you did it, and dropped a Lamb to the Slaughter and hit Uther, that would be a pretty significant play, right? You'd do a little bit of damage before dying, but Uther would be silenced for 3 seconds, couldn't ult himself or anybody else. If you had a dive team,
It makes it more situational. The fact that the cooldown is also increased from 60 to 90 is kind of disillusioning me with this more and more as I read these changes. There's some buffs, but it seems to be much more significant nerfs. And the fact that you can get
Butcher
out of it
came out when I was in Chicago and not playing a lot of Heroes of the Storm, so he's probably the hero I feel the least connection to, because I wasn't here during his initial like, oh, he's OP, and then people figured out how to deal with him and it was really bad. He just has not been competitive since. So I don't have a lot of knowledge on the Butcher. He's a hero that's almost nothing. I don't know much about him. I can't really comment that well.
He's very niche right now, and I think this change will make him even more so. We'll have to see how it unfolds.
I mean, maybe being niche isn't bad for him though, because he's not competing on a general sense. He's not competing in a we'd put Butcher or some other melee assassin and hope they do well. So maybe if he can actually fulfill a niche, you might see some play on it. But he's not going to be a generally good hero ever, I don't think, unless they significantly change him.
All right, another huge change, another huge rework to a champion
yeah.
is Tychus. They removed first aid, stone skin, bolt, basically everything that made him Tychus. The biggest
everything
change
that made him really, really frustrating to play against, and yet still not a good hero.
Right. He was one of the most OP heroes ever to be in the game. First pick, first ban, and last Heroes of the Dorm. Yeah, about a year and a half ago, he was one of the most oppressive people in the game. He basically had a double health bar with Odin.
Back when he was with the Abathur, and your most overpowered comp that you could imagine was Abathur Tychus.
Yep, double Odin.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a long time in the past, and that people don't credit that for being as overpowered as it was. They credit KT's original release. They credit Thrall's release. They don't ever really mention Tychus's double health bar with Abathur.
He was incredible. This was back when Abathur could use his clone and use the ultimate of the target. The fact that Odin had double health bar just meant that not only was this Tychus outputting a ridiculous amount of damage, but he was also he basically had the health and tank ability of a Cho'Gall currently. So pretty ridiculous.
You could focus him in human form because he'd use his ultimate, and then after he used ultimate, you couldn't focus him in his ultimate form because you just go back to his human form, and he did okay damage in there. So
and he'd still have stone skin and first aid.
He was so good.
But he has been relegated to dumpster tier down with Gazler for the better part of a year now.
For a long time, yeah.
He whenever I see a Tychus in the game, he's still going to be putting out a lot of damage. But if I'm on Kerrigan or if I'm on Muradin or if I'm on Uther, if I'm on someone that can stun or blow up a target, especially even Greymane now, Tychus is just one of the juiciest targets in the game for me.
First thing I think is, wow, that's still a hero, and second thing I think is, okay, who on my team can kill that guy without any trouble?
And then you say, oh, all 5 of us, right?
Yeah, like three or four of us can literally solo him, no problem. Just he dies. Yeah, so he needed a change, and I'm glad he got one. So let's see what they actually did to him.
Off the bat, just blanket, all of his talents seem to be pointing to the fact that they're reworking him to just be an anti-tank hero, someone that if they would go double tank in the draft and they haven't banned Tychus, they automatically lose the game, because just the sheer amount of talent that he has to just shred a tank's ability to live on almost every single tier is, I mean, it's a pretty significant niche that it looks like they're really trying to force hard.
I think he's going to be the bane of any tank player. I think if in mid draft now, if you give the tank player the mid draft role, he's going to be banning Tychus, because it's not even that he's just super overpowered against tanks, which he is a good counter to tanks now. I think that playing against him, they didn't remove what made him frustrating to play against with the minigun and how his overkill works, but they now made it stronger against tanks and less strong against normal players. So I think tank players are going to really hate playing against the Tychus.
Do you think it made him less strong against normal players? It looks like overall his damage is just increased.
I think it's increased a lot, but not in the same way it was against normal players before, where he would shove down a Q and then just run at you and jump at you, and then as you thought you were getting away, throw a grenade and kill you, which was basically how the interaction would go if you were caught out of position against a Tychus and you couldn't do it, which was really frustrating to play against. But I don't think that's going to be happening now. It doesn't seem like he has those overkill talents that he had before that really, like, does he still have a slow on 16 that was just really frustrating, because I don't see him as someone who's going to be targeting out a backliner now. I see him as someone who's going to be hitting the frontliner and making your whole team back out, because your frontliner can't really sit there and tank him anymore.
Something to note is you do need to build a team a little bit around him. He needs to play safe and be protected, because if you don't draft properly against him and you decide that you want to play Tychus, he doesn't have stone form and he doesn't have first aid anymore, and he was already a juicy, squishy target. So while he does do more damage, he does shred your tank's front line. If you can get in there and get on him and kill him immediately, if you can come around and wrap around behind on an objective, he's going to die pretty much immediately.
Yeah, oddly enough, I don't know if they did this on purpose, but he really seems to fit into the Terran bio ball from StarCraft, where you put a bunch of bio units and just ball them up. He seems like he'd fit really good in a team comp that can just hold together and be defensive by their numbers, because he doesn't have defense in his own anymore. He's not too strong.
So a comp that can be defensive through aggression.
Yeah, the defensive together, and they can be aggressive, and even if they're not aggressive and they're being aggressed upon, they can kind of back out safely, because they have a built-in healer with them, and maybe you lose a unit, but you're still kind of a strong, cohesive 300 style just hero that works well with other heroes nearby.
Either way, pretty significant changes. One of the most changed heroes, and it was necessary because almost every pro tier list had him at tier 4. He hasn't been picked in competitive in a year. Even shitter regions like EU and Taiwan don't touch Tychus right now. So it's a much needed change. We'll see how it fits in there. He is really squishy. He does a lot more damage now. Seems to be filling that hyper carry role, but has that niche of being a tank killer as well. So I'm excited to see how that will play out. If you just look at his Tychus talents, where it says the white text indicates new and blue text indicates moved, definitely the most changes of any of the heroes we've seen so far.
Especially in those early levels. I think what I first said when I saw this change was, this is the new hero that you ban if you want to play Cho'Gall. This is the Cho'Gall counter. You used to be afraid of Monk and Leo. I think this is the new hero that you're afraid of being picked. You pick Cho'Gall, and it's a pretty big nerf to Cho'Gall, right? Because now you have to let in Monk, you have to let in Leo if you're gonna go Cho'Gall, because that changes drafting a little bit. I mean, that's not as an exciting a change, but it affects Cho'Gall more than you think. And Stitches, I guess, to a degree as well, because he's another tank that takes a whole lot of health, and Diablo as well in that same degree.
It's true to some extent. The fact that he is squishy, does not have first aid, does not have snow form. He is going to blow up Cho'Gall. The Cho'Gall lets him. But it's all going to come down to the positioning of the Tychus. The Cho'Gall builds right now are upheaval into, Shadow Boat Volley. So if you can get an upheaval on Tychus, which should be pretty easy, if he's going to be in range to attack you, he's going to be in range for you to upheaval him towards you. If you upheaval him towards you, he's immediately dead because he's so squishy.
I wonder if upheaval takes it's a movement, not an interrupt, right? So he'd still be channeling overkill, right?
Right.
Upheaval's a second, right? How much max health is that? Like almost 10% max health in that duration. If you're close enough, you could even run and gun out of it. I'm
not saying it's not strong against it. I'm saying if they have a Tychus and you have a Cho'Gall, it's not an instant loss. You can definitely play around it.
I don't think it's instant loss, but I think it's someone you really don't want to see with Cho'Gall. I think that yes, you can upheaval him, but running gun's one of the better abilities to get out of it. He's an assassin that does have kind of a dash. I don't know. It's really hard to call this matchup now, but I think he's going to have the edge in the Cho'Gall matchup, especially when you consider the fact that you're going to have him and another hero for the Cho'Gall. You're going to have him and then maybe a tank, and the tank will help him a little bit in that matchup. I think Tychus is really going to be something you don't want to see as Cho'Gall. With all how many percent health talents does he have now? He has on a base level. He has some percent health damage.
I can't count it that high.
It's a scary proposition of someone to attack as Cho'Gall.
The next one we have is a very small change to Abathur. Will now inherit Karazim's trait. Probably the most insignificant change here if you're already cloning Karazim.
Ultimate Evolution Karazim. That's a mistake to begin with.
If you've done that, you've lost the game.
You've made a huge mistake, yeah.
The next change is a Taste for Blood duration, in which enemy deaths permanently add Globe of Annihilation damage increased from 1 to 1.5 seconds. And that is a big deal.
Yeah.
If you're picking Asmodan, you're picking him for his Taste for Blood talent level 1 to stack up your Q damage so you can be a huge threat late game. This meant that if you're doing the clear swapping in competitive, you would want to prep waves for Asmodan, get them low as possible, and blow them up with the Q from Asmodan. And it was really hard to do early game. I think this 1.5 second buffer is going to be huge. The biggest thing about Asmodan is getting those first stacks so that you can get your next stats exponentially easier, correct?
So at level 7, he's got a dot on his globe. My wondering is if that 1 second to 1.5 second is going to be 1 or 2 ticks from that dot. Because if that's going to allow an additional dot tick, that's going to mean an incredible amount for killing minions in the early game. That's gonna mean that he can solo. He gets basically an auto attack less that he has to do to prep away for himself, which is gonna mean quite a bit.
The quicker you get to being able to queue a wave and just blowing it up by yourself immediately, the quicker you stack up. Would you say it's an exponential curve in the Globe of Annihilation damage?
Yeah, I'd say that if this allows him to at level 7. Throw a globe on a minion wave and have an entire dot tick after the minion wave hits, get a stack. He's going to. I mean, it's going to jump forward the level that he can one hit waves by basically 3 or 4 levels, right? And then at that point you're stacking starting 3 or 4 levels earlier. It's huge, especially for solo queue, but even in competitive, that's gonna matter. It seems like almost nothing of a change. But that's gonna. I'll have to see how it synergizes with his level 7 talent, and if that gives him another dot tick at that point, that's gonna mean that he gets stacks off of waves that he would not have gotten before, like full backline stacks, and that's huge.
Pretty big change. I'm excited to see it. He's one of the few champions that really does fulfill that niche. If you see Asmodan in competitive. You're not really surprised. You know exactly what he's going to do, but you don't see it that often, right? So he fulfills that role well, and they're buffing that capacity. So that's interesting. The next hero we have is Gazlo. significant
Yes.
challenge changes. They've pretty much removed a lot more than they've added. They removed pretty much all of his generic talents, but added some pretty significant ones. I am
And he
not.
took a lot of those too.
I'm sure you've read this more than I have. I've read it once, and it didn't seem too impactful to me. But you seem to have a little bit more of a grasp on it.
So I think his laser build is going to see a little bit more play now. I mean, in addition to the level 20 talent that lets his all of his tower shoot lasers, which is really cool, but not probably. I mean, it's level 20 talent. Level 20 talents are somewhat impactful, but you really don't consider champions balance, their heroes balance based on their level 20 talent. The Death Laser, his W, has had some talents move down to lower levels and some move to higher levels. But when I looked at this in game, what I think it added up to was his laser build's been improved, and I think you can kind of build a laser and turret combination that works pretty well. And one thing that one change that you might discount is his RoboGob ultimate, which was, I think, so this RoboGob ultimate was an ultimate that I think in the end was a better competitive ultimate than his Gravo Bomb. His Gravo Bomb works better in solo queue because it sets up combos. That's really easy to play with a whole bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. But his RoboGob ultimate really gives him an ability to push more than other heroes might be able to, and it's kind of similar to how Sylvanas works and can take down structures. So with RoboGob now he can use his ultimate on a hero and have all of his turrets attack that, and that focus on like Temple is gonna actually, like, before he had a niche on Temple, people would kind of occasionally pick him on Temple, but I now think he might actually be like a someone you actually have to really consider on Temple. Like you have, before it was like a viable option, now it's actually someone who might be strong. It might be actually a ban.
Things like Battlefield of Eternity too, we're going to be fighting over
Yes.
one location for a prolonged period of time, are going to be
And
really good.
Especially because Battlefield has the tendency to go late, right? So you will actually see his 20 talents. You'll actually see kind of his split push and his really strong, his strength come out in that map, because he can not only win early but make that map go long. I think Gazlo's actually going to see light for the first time since the game was released. Since alpha, it'd be the first time I'd see light. That I don't want to put my name behind it, but I'd say Gazlo might have gotten the biggest buff of any hero in this patch.
It'll be interesting. He did take away a lot of his durability talents. He still has no escape, and it's going to be he's definitely going to be a pretty quick focus fire. If Gazlo is good, he's still going to be squishy. People are going to focus him. So if you're good with Gazlo and your positioning's good,
great target to focus though. So it doesn't change much in that sense. It doesn't change his strengths.
well, before if you left Gazlo up, it wasn't that huge of a deal. Now if you leave him up, you're probably going to lose the team fight. So he's going to have a much bigger target on his back. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm gonna want to see how this plays out. It'd be interesting to see him played in competitive matches. It hasn't happened yet, but I'd love to see it happen.
Yeah, not in any serious games. Obviously, we talked about Murky and Fish Tank, where they kind of nerfed the basic attack buff that they did. March of the Murlocs damage has been increased. We haven't seen this ultimate in a year now.
Yeah, I mean, with the cleanse and this buff, maybe you see him go with it. I mean, if you're not going to be able to ever really Murky ult anybody, because the second you pick Murky, they're going to ensure they have a cleanse on their team, especially with bans now. You might see it. It might happen. March of the Murlocs, that's a significant damage increase. It doesn't seem exactly like one, but that's what, a 40% damage increase? That's
No,
pretty
yeah,
big.
you'll see it for sure. Especially if you're quick matching and you definitely get someone that's going to cleanse you immediately. You're going to get March of the Murlocs.
Yeah, March of the Murlocs was not good for that reason before, because it did some damage, but it didn't really do enough. Like, you just move out of the zone. It was kind of a worse version of other zone ultimates for a hero that really needed their ultimate to shine. He didn't really see play by anybody until Octograb became popular. We'll see how this works out. I mean, it hasn't been picked since it used to take down structures at a stupid rate, so I don't know. I'm willing to believe.
We'll
At
try
least for
it.
a week.
You're the murky player here, the resident murky master skin player. I've
Um,
got like 2 games with them total, so I'll take your word for it.
all right. I can't wait to see what that does. Zebo Gargantuan changes. I don't even have to read these. I don't care about them.
More team fight damage, less split push.
I hate that ultimate. I don't see why you would pick Zebo if you want to go Gargantuan. You might as well pick a specialist that pushes lanes. That's
Right.
not what Zebo's for.
Sylvanas, another giant rework. I'm really torn. I don't know what to think of this. This is the one I've read the most. Her basic attack damage increasing from 74 to 85. Probably one of the bigger changes here. Her early laning is going to be really strong. She doesn't have Envenom at 4 anymore, but Envenom was already a much weaker version than it previously was. Do you know, does Withering Fire, is that just its own thing, or is it on hit from her autos? Like, is her extra 11 auto damage going to affect her Withering Fires?
I believe it's its own thing, but one thing to consider is I don't think that they haven't taken away her follow through. Is it follow through? No, it's whatever increases her auto attack damage every time she uses an ability, which was a nerfed version of it because she would always have that. But with her auto attack damage increase, and I think they left that talent in, that might see a lot more pick at 7, right?
Yeah, maybe. Well, 7, probably not, because you have Unstable Poison, which is just so good.
That's unstable. It's versus unstable poison and
Possession,
which I think unstable poison is a strictly better talent than possession. I think unstable poison as a talent was better than her ultimate as a talent, and I think they buffed her ultimate in moving it to 7, and it's still not as good as unstable poison.
Yeah, you were saying that earlier, and it kind of just shows how terrible of an ultimate that was. Something that's not talked about much. Walden actually tested this for us on the PTR, but you actually don't get the experience for converting those 3 minions into your own, and they actually get the experience for killing those minions. So not only are you're giving
so
up
bad.
a lot. Yeah. You're almost you're swinging a wave of experience every time you use it if they have people to clear.
And it's not like the wave was really the significant pushing force of anybody. No one who was good at pushing was good at pushing because they kept the wave up. Zola's one of the few ones that actually adding more minions improves your push, but it's based on summons or what you do to towers. It just seems so. That's an awful talent. As an ultimate was bad, it's bad now. It's always going to be bad. So follow through versus unstable poison. If you have no wave clear, unstable poison, of course. If you're not too concerned with wave clear, if you're on a map like Battlefield and you don't really care that much about wave clear, I could really see follow through getting a huge buff here with the increased auto attack damage.
It'll be interesting. Her early laning, just with the increased autos, is going to be a lot nicer.
Yes.
She was already a decent laner. She just wasn't a strong solo laner. She just held her own, but now she might actually be able to bully. There might be some outplay potential. You might actually be able to chunk, which is really interesting. Another huge change to her, probably the biggest change, is Cold Embrace. It no longer decreases the range, which is nice, but it only works with the original target. So basically, at level 16, you're getting Hunter's Mark on her W.
I never really significantly felt that the range nerf on that 16 mattered. Getting the range back isn't a huge deal. That single target, it brings her in line with all the other heroes, except for, I guess, Jaina. In terms of they being able to give a single hero a 25% nerf, that was the Sylvanas thing at 16. That buff, that power spike was huge, but it's still decent. I think the big elephant in the room we haven't addressed with Sylvanas is her new ultimate, her possession, or what it should be called possession, but is instead called what is it called?
Mind control.
Mind control. Okay. So I've played a couple of games of ARAM, of draft on that map, of just a normal game. Sylvanas has been every game. The Mind Control Ultimate, I'd say it's almost decisive what people think about it. Some people say it's really strong, some people say it's really weak. It's fighting a pretty strong ultimate with Wailing Arrow. The ability to really screw up someone's position, and the range is fairly significant. It's almost safe. It's still up in the air of that's better than Wailing Arrow. I think it's a decent contender. But what's your thoughts on seeing it? Just the text.
My thoughts on seeing it are I don't want to be really definitive saying it's bad or good because it's one of those talents that it kind of looks bad, but once you see it in game, once you see it in action, once you see it with a good team, can prove devastating. That time and time again, we've proven that there are talents that people have written off that have just changed the entire flow of the game. Nature, like even things like Lunar's Nature's Culling. No one talked about that in the first 2 weeks of release. Everyone was trying all these different builds out. The build that people are currently using, no one thought about. So this is definitely one of those ultimates and abilities that I don't want to say for sure one way or the other. We'll have to wait and see.
So I think one of the it has a decent range on it. It has a I compared it to a Murky ult before, but I think it's stronger than that. I'm still not sure if it can be cleansed because I've been playing with pretty weak players. No one seems to be of the caliber to someone who would cleanse it if it was. But if it's not cleansable, if you were to possess a warrior in that critical stage when warriors go to the front line and could drop to like 50% and then kind of fall back, get some healing, come back. If you were to possess a warrior, then run him into your team and just kill him, that changes team fights, right? That's a.
So you're saying you don't start the team fight with it. You chunk out the warrior a little bit and then use it.
I think you'd be able to start a team fight with it if you caught someone very far out and were able to just run a backliner in because they were out of position. Of course, that's the first idea you think of when you think of the ult. But in an actual team fight, the warrior walks in, attacks your team, kind of gets on your backline. You just mind control the warrior. He can't use his defensives. He can't save himself. He just dies. That changes how it's a 2.5 second stun almost. That also fucks up your opponent's position. That's hard to really overvalue in the right hands. But obviously you have to contend with the fact that you're also CCing yourself for 2.5 seconds, which is as one of the 3 damage in the current meta. That's a significant loss in ability to actually burst that person down who you're CCing. So again, you're right in not taking a defensive stance, but I think it's interesting that the way that this is going to be used, if it's used, is not the immediate reaction you'd think. You're probably not going to be hitting a support with it unless the support's Rhaegar and out of position. But I mean that's obviously you'd prefer to hit, but I think there's certain other targets you'd want to hit with it that you wouldn't really immediately think you want to hit.
In addition to all these, a lot of the talents have been moved, and the move talents are the hardest to assess because there's so many variables that go into moving talents in a build that you need to try it out multiple times when it's live. So, this is more of a wait and see hero.
Yes, and Sylvanas was someone who kind of was falling a little bit out. I mean, she was pretty big for a while, but even without very very many changes, that's just been kind of falling out of favor. And this is really a big change that I think we'll see her a little bit of play for a while, and then we'll see where she fits.
Right. So, minor nerf to Lost Vikings. The block on Olaf has been nerfed. The time between it has been changed, but block has been increased. So, pretty much the same, right? Not too much of a nerf, not too much of a buff for a block on Lost Vikings in.
Wait, time between block stacks reduced from 8 to... Does that mean he gets more block stacks or less? That almost sounds like it's more.
Time between block stacks reduced from 8 to 5.
So does he get a stack every 5 seconds?
Let me look up that talent. From what I read online, this is a nerf, but...
I can't imagine they buff Vikings, right? One of the highest win-rate heroes. Or maybe do people not take Olaf? I'm embarrassingly underinformed on
Okay, so this talent is every 8 seconds Olaf can block a basic attack, reducing its damage by 75%, and can store up to 2 charges.
So that's a buff, right?
Looks like it.
Why would they buff Vikings? Ew.
Well, Vikings buff.
Yeah.
There you go. Vikings is already a strong niche pick in some bigger maps.
I'm gonna check Pot Slugs. Is that a talent that people take? I wish I knew more about Vikings. I'm embarrassingly under.
Yeah, I don't play Vikings. We need someone like Rusty on here that plays Vikings a
So
lot.
it's taken 9% of the time. Bribery's taken the majority of the time. I guess this is just like kind of one of those we want to see diversity in talent picks changes, maybe.
I guess we'll see.
It doesn't look like a big deal.
Zol, Curses, Strikes, attack speed slow, now only affects heroes and summons. Pretty big deal.
Yeah, I guess that reduces his ability to solo camps.
Yeah. And his laning is already pretty strong in the right situations. The minions are attacking slower. It's the same way Knight takes pawn on Joanna. The stun was too long. The fact that the minions weren't attacking the wave, not only were they being damaged, but the fact that they were stunned and weren't attacking the wave meant that the wave pushed out in your favor that much more. Zol's Curse to Strikes means they're attacking slower, which means your wave is doing more damage. So not only are you killing the wave, but you're doing more damage in that way.
In my experience, with Zol taking waves is you throw a Q and you W like twice and the wave's dead. So I mean maybe it'll affect a little bit of like if he's fighting in a wave that he's not immediately killing, but this doesn't seem like a huge change. It seems like maybe a minor nerf.
It's very minor, and like you said, it's probably mostly going to affect mercenary games.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think every little tiny nerf you can give to Zol is a decent idea right now, and that doesn't seem like something that would affect the way he feels, which is nice for a nerf to do. Not really affect how you feel playing, but still kind of weaken it. Yeah, it's the kind of nerf I'd hope you give a few more to keep bringing back in line.
Right. The next change is probably my favorite of the patch. Just it's pretty small,
really?
but it's interesting enough. Maw has been nerfed to the point where it takes forever to use. It's 120-second cooldown, and you can really feel the length of it. So Nidus Worm getting these huge buffs might make it viable on some bigger maps. Maybe you got an Abathur, and you can really put the pressure on, especially in a quick match or hero league where they might not respond as well. Basically, inside Nidus Worm, your health and mana are restored at the rate equal to Hall of the Storms, which is the base, which is a pretty big deal. Nidus Worms can now be cast while you're inside another Nidus Worm. And
so,
go on.
I embarrassingly have never taken Nidus Worm as a talent. I don't know if it's embarrassing or more like not embarrassing.
It's not embarrassing.
But I don't know how the ability works. I almost feel like that first line, if it works the way I think it does, is a quality of life change more than anything else, because you would leave a Nidus on the spawn anyways. Just go to the spawn and head back out to a different Nidus Worm. I can't really evaluate this that
well. Now you don't have to go to base at all. You can just
yeah, which makes it a quality of life change, because if you could just Nidus to the base immediately, you're not really. It just means you don't have to pop out at base and then go back in.
Well, instead of placing a Nidus Worm top lane, roaming bottom, and then pushing, and then Nidusing to the top, you never have to go top. You can just stay bottom, push, go into your Nidus Worm, burrow a Nidus at the top, because you can now cast while you're inside another Nidus Worm. You never have to go to the Hall of the Storms, and you... If you're in a situation where you're in a prolonged laning phase, you can more quickly... regain your health and mana rather than going back and forth between the Nidus Worm and the Hall of the Storm. So you can just pop into your Nidus Worm that's in your lane in the brush, heal up, get full health and mana, and just continue to push.
So my question is, someone who hasn't actually used Nidus Worm before, is can you just pop into a Nidus Worm and pop out at a different one immediately? Because if you can, I think every Ziggar I know always has a Nidus Worm on base.
You can't immediately. I think that's designated. You can kind of see that in this third change. Ziggar now exit Nidus Worms instantly. It was a little bit of a delay before.
Okay. So I feel like almost the way this change worked was they said let's let Ziggar instantly exit the Nidus Worm so she can enter and jump out somewhere else. And then they said, well, now Ziggar is kind of incentivized to get into the Nidus Worm, jump out on the Hall of Storms, and jump back in and go somewhere else. And they said, let's just say she gets healed at the rate she does in this Temple of Storms.
It's a lot of quality of life.
Yeah, I feel like it's a buff and then a lot of quality of life to make it so you didn't have to do some kind of weird workaround to get extra health and mana.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
It's a buff, I think, but I don't know if it's. I mean, Ma's very effective in team fight, and I've literally only ever seen Nidus Worm used as a cheese with Abathur. So, yeah, we'll see. I'm very skeptical on that.
As you should be. Another small change, damage reduction amount changed from 50% to 75% on Pixie Dust, which is Brightwing's E. Brightwing is seeing more play in competitive. We've been seeing her more and more, so any small buff is going to just see that increased even more. I don't think it's a huge deal, but it's not
Seems like
small.
just consistent with the block change, really.
Right.
Like I think that the Pixie Dust basically might have already read give 2 block stacks to target, and this is just keeping up with that.
Small change again on Lily, which is another support. Damage reduction amount increased from 50 to 75%. She is one of the only supports without an escape other than Uther and Malf. Malf can actually appeal for himself with E. Medic can throw a grenade. Uther can stun. Lily can just run away. So this is a pretty decent change for her, like you said, in line with the block changes. Lily is the least competitive support right now. You almost never see Lily. So
she's basically the only support you look at and you say, I don't think we could ever run that support. And when my support says I want to run Lily, she's the only support I'd say no, we're never doing that at this current time. We're not. There's no situation we want to run Lily. So any buff to Lily is welcomed. I feel like all the other supports are kind of in a situation where niche you could use them. Lily, not at all.
Right.
So
another huge change. Rhaegar is just getting small nerf after small nerf. As we saw, the Ancestral not being able to target himself was a huge change. Makes him a really viable focus target. Now they've nerfed Earthbind Totem, which is the new go-to build. Can now be hit by area effect abilities. Might not on the surface seem like a huge deal, but remember how prevalent Healing Ward was picked 1.5 years, 2 years ago? As soon as they changed it to being able to be hit by area and effect abilities, it was never picked yet. You don't see it near as much as you did before.
And you mentioned it a little bit, but the kind of change after the Lightning Shield nerfs was towards that level 1 and level 13. 13 or 16?
16 is the slow.
16 Earthbind Totem talents. So this nerf, it feels like as a Rhaegar player, you were finally getting into a groove with your Lightning Shield build, and then you said they nerfed it, and then you moved to your Earthbind Totem build, and they nerfed it. So we'll see. The 16 talent really only needs to have the Earthbind Totem for 1 second to be effective. So it's not like you were really ever in a point where you had to focus down that turret. It was occasionally the best move if you were trying to chase, but it's not like Healing Ward where you used to focus it down when it needed like an auto attack to go down. You would always take the time to kill it. I don't know if you really take the time to AoE this thing down. It's just incidental damage is going to be the difference.
In a team fight, it's just it won't live. It'll probably get 1 tick off.
But that 1 tick is going to be his level 16 talent, which is going to be the 1 second slow, which will be nice. He'll still work on that build. I think it's just going to be the slow afterwards is going to be reduced, which almost is a nerf to Lunara if you think about it, because that was a huge deal with Lunara's unfair advantage. Is you'd like to run a Rhaegar with his slow there. Mm-hmm. So it's an incidental nerf to Lunara almost if she's running with Rhaegar, or just his synergy with her.
Another small change. Joanna getting her reinforced talent, which is level 1 block. Clone getting kind of in line with the new block changes, 50 to 75%. This change is actually pretty good. Reinforced was always decent on Joanna. It's just Night Takes Pawn was super good. After the nerf to Night Takes Pawn, if you have enough wave clear and you have a strong solo laner, if you're taking Joanna just to be that strong solo tank and they have a lot of auto attackers,
I don't know.
Maybe you go this.
When I get excited about taking Joanna right now, it's because I'm on like one of the maps that you clear swap on, and I want to have a tank that will very easily go and clear swap. Say it's Tome, and she can go in there, clear swap, take the get all the gems really quickly because she's in there anyways, and she does half the damage to them anyways, or Infernal Shrines.
It's a nice situation. If you go at level 1 in the game, you push your talents, and you see a auto tech Falstad and an auto tech Vala. It's nice to be able to have this option.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about when I'm drafting Joanna. I don't know if there's a situation I'd want to do this over, and bans maybe make this more relevant, but I don't see a situation where I want to take a Joanna that's going to take block over a Muradin or a Leo. If I'm taking the other talents that are already available to those heroes, I don't I feel like that's gives her some more flexibility, but that's in a flexibility of like a quick match game when you're her and you want to change, and not if you're drafting her. This really doesn't align with why you pick Joanna. So I could see that changing like lower skill level games, but in higher skill level games, when you're drafting your tank as your second or third pick, I don't see you pick Joanna if you want to take this talent.
You're not ever going to draft her for a level 1 talent. I'm just saying it's a nice situational pick.
True, but
you
did draft in the past. You did draft her for Knight's Take Pawn. That was a talent that heavily factored into your drafting.
Fair enough. Another Rexar change, Grizzle Bear. Another block talent change being aligned. I don't know about Rexar to talk about it. He's still bad.
Yeah, that's the same talent tier as his health regen, right? His globes. I don't think he does. I think he still doesn't take this talent.
Any notable bug fixes you've seen? The biggest one I saw was that Jaina's basic attacks weren't properly giving her mana for her Arcane Intellect, which is the new build I've been going.
You take Arcane Intellect down. We'll have to talk about it later. I'm not sold on that yet, but I could see how that could be good. Nothing that really bothered me. Zol's Skeletal Mages now probably prioritize heroes is kind of nice. Nothing really jumps out at me. There's a lot of those such changes, but yeah, I think we touched on the big rework changes, and I think everything else is gonna.
You're not gonna talk about this huge change. The dark smudge has been removed from the background art of the main loading page.
Oh wait, okay. Now, if we're talking about smudge changes, I think we should mention.
Oh, whoa! I didn't even see this. They've apparently fixed the invalid bug.
Really? Because I don't believe them at all when they say that.
Yeah, I haven't had a huge deal with it lately, but I remember about a month ago it happened all the time.
I was actually not ever impacted by it, but I was impacted by other people who were complaining about it. So as long as that their complaining is nerfed, I'm happy with that change. So, but knowing Blizzard, I will now be the only one who gets the invalid bug, and it will make my life very sad.
Well, I feel like we've been talking for a year now. This is definitely the biggest patch we've ever had in Heroes of the Storm, and it's finally feeling like a complete game once they come out with the season 1. They come out with the new ranked system, and Arena will probably come out with that. That'll be Heroes of the Storm 2.0. The game will finally be released.
That'll really increase the range of competitive, and then the range all the way down to casual with the ARAM and the Arena. I'm looking forward to that because I like to sometimes skirt the edge of that. I like to drop down to casual.
Yeah, every once in a while you've been competing, doing scrims all week. Sometimes you just want to have fun with the game that you put so much of your time into. So
I like to have to not look to a different game to do that and go do it. Yeah, it'll be fun. I can't wait for those changes. But this is a great tiding over. It kind of shakes things up. It brings up some of the heroes that we haven't really seen in a while, and then I'm looking forward to this patch. The PDR has been a little bit of fun. Of course, it's not a great look at it because you're kind of playing with potatoes on and against your team. So I'm looking forward to these hitting live and seeing what happens.
As am I. Well, I appreciate you staying up late and talking for what seems like 4 hours now on changes. So
something like that, or something.
I appreciate it, man. You have a good night.
All right, you too.
Take care.